We welcome you all, the lovely group. Jack Head is the past chairman of the Stowe Historical Commission, not the Stowe Historical Society, but the Stowe Historical Commission. They do a wonderful job of registering and listing the ancient houses, the old houses in Stowe. And Jack has just stepped down as chairman and handed the reins to John Mackey back here. We're very pleased that John is in that position. And Jack has very graciously volunteered to introduce our guests tonight. Jack?
Thank you, Barb. 1992, as far as the commission was concerned, focused its primary attention on setting up or trying to locate the boundaries of our town and the original lots as laid out in it. It was a frustrating year by and large because we came up with very, very little information. The one bright light in it came about when Morse Payne of Lincoln came to one of our meetings with some ideas. Morse Payne is going to present tonight these ideas and share what we know with all of you. We hope it will stimulate your thinking, your recollections of any old papers, deeds, bills of sale that date back to the 1600s, anything that might be tucked away. If you can't read it, we do have somebody in the Ancient Documents Committee who can read it, and we would love to borrow them just long enough to read them and copy them. Now, Morse Payne comes with more than adequate credentials. Morse lives in Lincoln. He's been a Lincoln and Littleton resident for quite a number of years. Now, he was a principal of Architects Collaborative, and I wish we'd known that when we put the addition on here. Maybe he could have straightened out the leak in that roof there. He's past president of the Boston Architectural Center, a school he's very closely associated with because he attended there as a GI student right out of the Second Crusade. He's had 10 years as an assistant professor at Harvard. He's past president of the Lincoln Historical Society, and he's a member of the Mass Society of Genealogists, and also a member of the Massachusetts Colonial Society. Since he retired some 6 years ago, was it? He has been devoting his time to land research projects. This is where we come in. And this means that he is an architectural historian, which roughly translated means he's an architect interested in history. Morse Payne.
I'd like to recognize some people here tonight who've helped me. When I first came here, I came to this library. I didn't know where else to start, and I asked who might be helpful, and it was referred to Mary Warren. Very nice to see you. Thank you. And she had some advice, and one of them was to see the Historic Commission. So that brought me to Jack Head, and he and his wife have been most gracious and helpful during this period. I'd like to mention another one in town, and that is John Mackey, who was one of the people that really was able to go into the woods and into areas where I couldn't possibly have gone and understood where things were. He's now chairman of the commission, but I've come to know him and I consider him a friend, John. And one other I'd like to make note of is one from a neighboring town here tonight. Is from Boxborough, George Cruson, who is one of those people who's like a beetle and digs around and digs and thinks, I think, somewhat like I do. And he's here tonight, and I say thanks. This is a strange mission I'm on, and how I got into it, I'm going to try to unfold rather than try to tell you. So why don't I just start, and I'll put on a series of slides, overhead projector films, and we'll go back into England. Because what I believe has happened is that what brings me here is original land grant work. And I think it's a period that none of us know anything about. I certainly didn't. And just to help you time-wise, I made this simple time chart. But from here, these dates come down 1620 to 1630. Now, these are very important dates for us in New England. This is when Plymouth Colony is set in 1620. If you come all the way down another 10 years, it's when the Mass Bay Colony is. But I would ask you to focus on another colony that was here before the Mass Bay Colony, and only like 2.5 years after Plymouth. It's a colony that somehow most of us have really no inkling of. I know I didn't when I first started. Maybe I'd seen it and it just passed right by me, and then I came back. But most of what I'll deal with is out of that period, so if you can imagine it. It's so much earlier than even the most majestic period of the Bay Colony period. It's almost unbelievable, the types of things I'm trying to bring to you tonight. So let me try and hope I can make sense out of this.
Is that spelled correctly, Gorges?
With an O.
Gorges.
Yep.
Gorges.
Yep. I'm going to have to help you through a lot of this material because I don't assume that everyone looking at this, everything I'm going to show will understand exactly why I might be showing it. Now everyone has seen a compass and knows that we're looking at a regular standard compass with a north-south axis this way. Now this is what it would be if we were looking at a compass that's made up of all the degrees around for 360 degrees. But that's not the compass we're dealing with. The compass we're dealing with is a compass of another day, another time, which is dealing with points. So what we're going to be concerned with is not true north, but magnetic north. It's a really very basic part of this thesis. And that will be, in colonial times, something like 13 degrees off of north. So that's where the red line is. So it's a difference from here to here. It doesn't look like much, but surprisingly, it's enough. And the reason for this is that at sea, their compasses, oftentimes even using a magnetic compass, was still a very difficult instrument to use. And what they would often do is use the stars. They could they could determine latitude very well. They had more difficulty with longitude, which is the rotational aspect, which is time. They had much more difficulty with that. But the latitude work was fine until they came to the shore. Now from then on, as they went into the interior, they will go back to their regular compass. They won't be doing stars because the amount of work they're running and the amount of lines they're doing is relatively small, and the magnetic compass can serve for that. So this is what we'll be dealing with here. If you don't know what this generates, just quickly, we're looking down on top of the world. This is the North Pole right at this point. So as we come away from the Arctic Circle, this point is right here above Canada. This is the Hudson Bay, so this is the top of Canada going out to Alaska this way. Coming around, and here we are down here, let's say in Stowe, at this point. So the line I just showed you on the previous compass is this difference. And it's being driven to a point where all of our magnetic compasses drive to this point and not true north. It's a devilment of an instrument. It is not one that really leaves us with great encouragement. Through time, it's fluxing, meaning it's moving, and we do know that it's rotating on something like a 112-year cycle. So there's probably been only two times during the whole history of the United States that we've seen the full cycle of it, but it does move and does affect surveying, at least if they use these types of instruments. Surveyors today can cut through that because of the electronic equipment they have. Now I'd like to put on something that's going to be a little bit distracting, but I want to put it on because I think it can bring up a point. There's a tendency for us to not even know what these people are capable of. But the date of this map is 1610. Now it is, here we are in Cape Cod. You can see there's still a bit unknowing about how to really make the whole coast work, but in general you can see pretty much the resemblance, and here we are 1610. To give you a sense of this time-wise, they know all about the world. It's amazing how much they know. They've already established latitude and longitude far earlier than this. As a matter of fact, Columbus, as you know, even had a globe on board the ship. So it is not new. And the idea of how to divide it is again one of the curses of cartography, is how to make a map. If you make it like this and just square these off, they look beautiful, just squares. But as you know, these lines are having to converge up like an orange slice to the poles, and they have to diminish. So what's going to happen when you do a square thing, this is all going to be expanded, everything on the north as it goes north. Now this beautiful map, this is probably one of the most beautiful maps of colonial times. This was done in 1614 by, of all people, Captain John Smith, whose life, although he was the principal leader of the Virginia group, his whole life and destiny was one of exploration and surveying. But he gives us this marvelous map where you can really see Cape Cod, you can feel Boston, you can see the Cape going on up and going up the Maine coast. No, not absolutely accurate, but surprisingly good. Now there's a point I'd like to point out here. You also will see lines kind of going helter-skelter all over the place here. These lines are known as run lines, and it is possible that you as a navigator, skipper of a ship, could plot your course depending on how these lines came, and you could go pretty much to your destiny and find your place, provided you stayed directly on that course and went on up. If you were going to there and there, you just go up and down the coast until you found the place. But what I'm leading to is this. Though people could tell you that these are run lines, it just left me all kind of in wonderment. and then again you see it here. Now here we see a bit of a bigger vision. This is now the whole of the North Atlantic, equator being way down here. So you'll now see these run lines, helter-skelter, all over the place here. And again, you're just unknowing about and baffled by all of these lines, and they seem so scrambled and incoherent. Yes, until you see something like this. If I put this here, now let me draw this back because it's incoherent. What you're looking at is a system like that. Now I'll put this back on and I'll show you what you didn't see. What I didn't see. You'll notice that points like this and this, you do see. And you will see them here. But you never got a coherent picture of the whole, because as they came inland, overland, they didn't show it. So what they actually had was a system like I'm showing you now, and you just barely see that. I can't see the position exactly on there, but there. So I'll draw it off, and now you can see. Now my point is to show you the strength and the power of decision-making they had in terms of cartography and in terms of the elementary beginnings of surveying that show up so early. And for my needs, our needs, is to know that we can now see that they had a coherent idea from this. I'll take this off again, but this is now, now that we know it's a circular form, we can see that from the equator, or from the principal meridian as it runs through Greenwich, England, they took a point here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, one of the primary points for this map, which is a map out of the early 1600s, this is the principal point that was the decisive breaking point for the meridian, with the great, not conflict, but the great discharge of the whole world between Spain and Portugal. This is how they broke up the world, and they split it down the Atlantic Ocean. Now, if you notice, it comes down and it'll hit the northern part of South America, so that isn't going to be quite right to Spain, who really wants it. So what they did, they came down, and then they jogged over, and then went down the rest of the Atlantic, right down between Africa and South America. But we're, in this study, we're only interested in the northern part of the North Atlantic. So now you've seen the evolution now through this. Now, before I leave this, I'm back now again to the compass. Now you'll see that all of these points that you saw on this were real meaningful points from the compass. And what they're doing is they're using a point compass. And I'll show you these points from 0, which would be north. It would go 1, 2, 3, stepping around 8, 16, 24, 32. It's a 32-point compass. That's what we're dealing with. It has nothing to do with a 360-degree compass at all. And then what predominantly you will begin to see emerge from some of this early work, they will actually drop out every other one, and they probably will be using what you might call a 2-point compass, which is actually 16 points. They will use 2, 4, 6, 8. Yes, they'll end up at 32 points again, but they will. So what I'm showing you is the 2-point system, yes, and in this case for the first quadrant, I've shown you actually the markings for the correct count. But that's the type of work, thing they're doing. Now another they can do in this. We now know that they can do a simple thing like this, obviously. So now you can see a circle. You know you can circle, but it can be a square. And now we can see the generation of longitude and latitude lines. You can see the differences of these lines as they step away. They're not all equal. And they can now do a number of things. They can join these, obviously, as groupings like this, as a structure, as a cartographer's basic geometry. They can find this kind of discipline. And now we haven't recognized a magnetic north in this chart, but it's simple enough. They will do this. They just go right along with it. And here's the same system. It's exactly the same. Now they recognize magnetic north in the same kind of basic geometry. I wanted to start with that, just as a basic source of information. Now I'm going to show you a personal piece of work that I did that may help you. When I started on this, my search started far away from here. It was on Cape Cod. And so you'd wonder, how did it come about that I'm here in Stowe? Well, let me show you first this piece of work that I did on the Cape. Because I know the Cape well enough, and have been down there since I was a youngster, I knew that the basic lines that make up the divisions for the various towns are like this. Here's for instance, Wellfleet, and here's Truro and Provincetown and Eastham, and coming around, Yarmouth, etc. Now I've known that, but if you look at this, and now that I've pointed out these various lines, they're all seemingly incoherent to one another. They don't have obviously any sense to them coming from any basic root. And that, and I didn't know that until I did something. All right, and I'd like to demonstrate this if I can get my pen out here too. I'm going to take, I happen to know this town because my family were here as early as 1635. This is Yarmouth. And so it was easy for me to have such a personal interest in this. And then I took an interest in this line, but I didn't know anything, but I just lazily, like an architect, just did something like this. And let's see if I get glasses. What I did was put a straight edge on this, and I went up like this across the land. This is an 8-mile run here. I then went on out and up and out and out, and I went up to Provincetown, and I kept on going, and I went way up to Maine or wherever. And then I looked back and I said, oh, no, yes, it did go to Provincetown, but Provincetown is really right here. It really went through Race Point. And I said, all of a sudden, bells just rang out. And I said, Race Point, that sounds like a surveyor's terminology, something. And then the next thing I knew intuitively, and those of you in the room who are used to maps would know what I'm talking about. The U.S. Geological Survey map has a strip down at the bottom with various facts that you need, kilometers and mileage and so forth, but it will always give you the angle of declination. That's the difference between true north and magnetic north. Now, I knew that, and as I say, those of you who know maps would know that intuitively also. I knew that this was magnetic north. Now, that's easy enough if you use the frame of the side of the sheet and assume that that's true north, and we'll get a line that'll be going up like that, and there's that 13 degrees that I talked of earlier. I then wondered, is that the end of the story? Or is there more to it? So I then stepped over and I took the next line, which is I don't know how many of you know the Cape well enough, but this would now be Yarmouth and Barnstable, this line. So I took this line and I did the same thing. I went down and I went straight through this. And I went out into the Cape Cod Bay, and I kept on going and going, and it went up through Truro, and then it went on out to sea. Well, nothing happened. Well, then I said, well, now I'll step over and do the next one, which was Barnstable and Sandwich. And I put that on. straight edge, and it went on out and out and out across where the first one crossed, where the second one crossed. Well, now the next one was a more difficult one because it's not a precise movement like this of slicing back through the land with a subdivision. But it's a point, a very distinct point in the land. So I used that point. And I, by now, was trying to anticipate something that I thought was happening. And I came up and went through this point. Now the punchline is this. These are all equal angles. And I just was frightened to death. And yet I was so elated that I knew intuitively what this must be. And I couldn't believe it. And I rushed on down to the Cape, and I went into several of the old surveying houses that would have been in the family for generations. And I showed them what I had uncovered, and I asked them, because they are the ones who go into the Barnstable County Courthouse and record deeds and lands. And if anyone would have seen this, they would have seen it. And they said, no, I've never seen it. But they didn't doubt it. And then one of them offered, they said, you know how they did it? And I said, no. I said, no. He said, they did it at night. And they anchored a ship right here, probably with forward and aft anchors, with 4 anchors to secure the ship. And then they've already on paper decided how they're going to divide this. And on a prescribed night, a man on horseback will ride back and forth in this position with a torch. As he rides back and forth, finally when he's on station from the masthead, they will signal him by light that he's on station. And they'll do that to each one of these. I didn't know that. It was also that. If you go down now, of course, these are now converted into concrete markers and letters. But that, I did have some satisfaction in knowing that, and yet I was still wondering, is there more to this? Let me end this piece, one more point of this. If I take this right angle, you see what I